Welcome back to our series on Plato's Republic. In this episode, we will be finishing up Book 6, the second half of Book 6, and we will be focusing on the analogy or the allegory of the sun, the image of the sun, and its relationship to the good. So in this book, Plato articulates or tries to articulate what the good, what knowledge of the good is, or what the good does, in relation to the many things that are good, through an analogy by appealing to the sun and the way in which we come to see things through the causal efficacy of the sun. So this will obviously have a lot to do with what the philosopher is, which we've been talking about at length, namely the one who is capable of having knowledge of justice, and thereby being able to himself be like justice, and so is capable of reproducing justice, right? There's all these images throughout the Republic about the reproduction. You had this quite explicitly or literally in the notion of children, kind of passing on one's life, reproducing your life in your child. But it's also the case that what I think you have is the just man, the guardian, is the one who is capable of reproducing that justice in the city, and because of the fact that there's a same type of order that's occurring between the city and the person. And we've talked about this at length already in this series. So we'll jump in to what Plato has to say about the sun. And the first thing to note is the comparison between seeing and knowing is one that is deeply ingrained into just our common understanding of things, and it's deep in many of our metaphors. The idea of coming to knowledge as a light bulb going off, right? So that you have this this awareness, which it's almost like the light has shone in the darkness of your mind, and so that things become clear, right? We use the notion of clarity. We use the notion of illumination. Something clicked. You're now illuminated. You now know, and so this is hopefully an analogy that we're already familiar with in a just a straightforward kind of idiomatic way. But hopefully, once we reflect on this, we'll see the depth of this analogy itself. Okay, so the first thing that's worth recognizing is there are things that can be seen, right? So there are visible things, and then there are things that can see, right? Visual things. So there's a distinction between things that can be seen and things that can see. And what Socrates says is there needs to be a third thing that is in play if sight is going to occur, right? So you are standing in a room and there is a alligator before you. Don't ask why there's an alligator before you, but there's an alligator before you, and It seems that the alligator, in virtue of being an alligator, is visible. In virtue of you being a human, you have vision, you can see, but it's not necessarily the case that you will see the alligator, even though both those things are true. What there needs to be is there needs to be light. There has to be something which unites the the visible object, the alligator, with the seer, right? And this unity, or this interaction, occurs through some third medium, or some third, we'll call it a thing, but this is maybe not the best way to put it. But this thing called light is what enables the alligator to be seen, and it's what enables the seer to actually see. And this is significant, because it's almost as if your eyes have a limitation. Your eyes can only do what they're supposed to do if there's something else. Likewise, the alligator can't be seen unless there is something else, and it's this sort of mysterious thing. I mean, even to this day, light's fairly mysterious. This mysterious thing we call light, on Plato's view, it's something like a transparent medium, so that it's not the case that what you're seeing is literally light. What you're seeing is the alligator because of the light, or in the light, or through the light, or by the light. The alligator is made actually known, and this is a real significant part of the story, because it's going to tie up with why the sun is an analogy for the good. Okay, so let's continue the analogy just a bit, and then we'll switch over to try to see how this communicates something about what the good is. So the putting it in another kind of way, the seer is sort of wishing, hoping, wanting to see things. The visible objects are sort of metaphorically wishing, hoping, wanting to be seen, and it's light which is sort of the giver. The light is what gives each of those two things to each other, and so the light has something like an aspect of a gift or reciprocity. It's what gives the visible object to the seer, and it's what opens the seer to actually see the visible object. And so the light has this this characteristic of giving, right? It's what gives the two to each other. And so for Plato, it seems like this is an apt analogy, because of the fact that this is an analogy of knowledge or understanding more generally or more broadly. So here's how this is sort of supposed to go. So just as seeing is to the sun, knowing is to the good. Okay, so here's what I mean. So there are things that can be known, right? So think of all the many things that can be known. Some of these, maybe you know. Obviously, there are going to be many things that are out there that you just don't know, but you could know, right? You could know many things that you actually currently don't. So you have this ability to know, and there are things out there that have an ability to be known. just as we saw with the case of vision, there are many things that have the ability to be seen and many things that have the ability to see. But there needs to be some third unifier that unites the two, that gives the two to each other. Likewise, there needs to be something that gives the knower and the knowable to each other, so that the knowable becomes actually known in the knower. Something needs to unite the two, and this is what the good is for Plato. It's what makes things that are knowable actually known by knowers. Just as the sun is what makes visible things actually visible or actually seen by seers. Okay, so the thing that also needs to be understood about this analogy, which is fruitful that Plato goes into discussion of, is that it's not so much the sun which is seen, rather we see the effects of the sun. So he distinguishes the sun from the light that it produces. And it's this light which is what enacts the actual vision or the actual sight of things. So the sun affects through one of its effects, light, vision. Okay, so there's something enigmatic or beyond sight about the sun, right? So what he's trying to articulate is that we know the sun by its effects. We know the sun because we see things. It's not even the case that we directly see light. It seems, right? What you directly see is the alligator. It's the table. It's the chairs around you. It's the walls around you. Those are the things that we actually see. But we know, or we become aware of the those things because of the light, and then ultimately the light itself is something which is affected by or caused by the sun. So there's this type of something which pushes you to this realization that there's got to be something beyond what you're immediately aware of, that something else caused or brought about. Okay, so here's how Socrates puts it. This is on page 203 of the Reeve translation. This is 508 B. Here's what he says. And isn't sight naturally related to that God in the following way? That God being the sun. So sight is related to the God in the following way. Which one? Neither sight itself, says Socrates, nor that in which it comes to be, namely the eye, is the sun. So sight, nor the eye is the sun, right? The sun is something distinct from everything that's happening here and now in vision. So the sun it plays a role, but the role that it plays in vision is kind of it's paradoxical to say, but it's like an absent role. It plays a role by kind of being transparent, by being in the background. It's what makes something possible. It's not one of the actors in the stage, right? It's kind of a background condition, not one of the main roles. If that makes sense, right? That's going to be a very significant idea for Plato because of the fact that it highlights that there is there is something about this recognition of knowing or seeing, leading you or pushing you to something which is beyond knowing or seeing, which makes knowing or seeing possible. Okay, so just as when you see something, that makes you initially think, but there's got to be something beyond what I see that makes this possible. And in this case, you can call it the light, or you can call it the sun, or what have you. In the case of knowledge, you're saying when you come to know something, there's got to be something beyond knowledge, which is what made knowledge possible in the first place. Okay, and so this is like the very beginning stages of an argument for God's existence in a type of way, because what it's an attempt to do is it's an attempt to go from effects to a cause of those effects, which must thereby like surpass that whole way of thinking, or that whole way of conceiving of things. Just as the sun might be beyond the notion or the ability to be seen, the analogy seems to suggest you don't look directly at the sun, rather you know the sun by looking at other things. How do you know God? The argument might go, it's not something that he's not something you can know directly, perhaps, according to this argument, but you know God indirectly through his effects. So I think there's an analogy that can be made between how we know the cause of sight and how we know the cause of being, or the cause of existence, right? And this would push you to something like an argument for God's existence, which would be the existence of something which is far different from the existence of any of the things that we actually experience or encounter. Okay, and so the good, like the sun, is going to be a cause of things. The sun's the cause of sight. The good is the cause of knowledge and of truth. And the way you could think about what truth is for Plato, that is, what does it mean to say that something's true? It means to say that it is knowable, right? So just as what it means to say that something is like colored, something has a color, it means that it's visible, it can be seen. To say that something is true is to say that it is knowable. So there's an analogy, I think, between color and truth that maps onto the distinction between sight and knowledge. Okay, and so just as the sun can be described or thought of as the cause of color, why is that? Because without the sun, without any light, color wouldn't be color in a sense, right? That no seeing would be possible at all. And if seeing were just not possible at all, then it seems like the very concept of color would be an incoherent concept. In order for something to be described as a color, red or green or blue or whatever, it's got to at least be possible for it to be seen, right? So the notion of having color exist entails that it's visible. Likewise, the notion that, or the idea, or the concept that something is true is coherent to the extent that it is knowable. Now, what it means for it to be knowable is going to be up for grabs. I mean, this is one of the things that we were talking about last time about different forms of knowledge. There's a distinction between belief and knowledge, or opinion and knowledge, right? And so we can we can talk about that here in a bit, but there's also that same type of ambiguity when it comes to vision, right? This is something that Plato also goes into. He's going to do this in greater length in Book 7, but you have the idea that you can look at a picture of an alligator and you can sort of describe that as you're looking at an alligator, even though you're not literally looking at an alligator. You're looking at an image of an alligator, right? And so you still have this degree. There's a degree of seeing, and I think that's going to map onto the degree of knowing that you find within the other realm. Okay, so the sun is a cause of sight. Likewise, the good is a cause of knowledge. Okay, very significant, and the way that you should think about how the sun and the good are analogical is that they are each, the cause of the unity of the knower and the knowable, which is like a giving or a gifting or a enabling of the two to be what they most fully are, right? So the knower most fully is a knower when it's actually knowing. A seer is most fully a seer when it's actually seeing. But it depends on something other than itself in order to achieve its fullness. And so the good, or the sun, is what allows each to achieve its fullness. Okay, and so that's why it's described as good. Okay. All right, and here is I just want to read a little bit about another effect that I think is significant, an effect of the sun, and how this carries over to the analogy with the good. This is on the top of page 205. This is 509b. Okay, so here it goes. Socrates says, let's examine our analogy in more detail. And then he goes on. The sun, I think you would say, not only gives visible things the power to be seen, but also provides for their coming to be, growth and nourishment, although it is not itself coming to be. Okay, so the sun, right, so think about the way he's drawing this analogy out. The sun doesn't just make things actually, seeable or actually able to be seen, but the sun also is responsible for making things alive, making things grow, and it actually provides the nourishment for everything. You could think of the sun as like the lifeblood of all organic life. Without the sun, there wouldn't be life. Not only would there not be a visible world, there just wouldn't be a living world, right? And he thinks this is a significant aspect of this analogy, which he's then going to try to use to appeal to how the good is a cause of life and of existence. Here's what he says. Therefore, we should also say that not only do the objects of knowledge owe their being known to the good, but their existence and being are also due to it. Although the good is not being, but something yet beyond being, superior to it in rank and power. Okay, so just as the sun isn't just responsible for things being seen, it's also responsible for things being alive. Likewise, Socrates says, the good isn't responsible just for things being known. The good is responsible for things existing in the first place. And I think the way to think about why this is because to exist seems to be linked up with being knowable, right? To exist requires that you're knowable. So if the good is the cause of something being knowable, it seems fair to say that it's also going to be the cause of it existing, because there's like, it's almost like two sides of the same coin. To know something is to know that it exists. And so its existence is almost the same thing as its knowability. It's able to be known, right? So something being colored is almost the same thing as it being visible, right? So something visible is something colored. That's like two sides of the same coin. It's almost like you want to give one answer for both of those. It is colored, it is visible. It's almost like you're saying the same thing. Does something exist? Is something knowable? Plato seems to be wanting to suggest that, like the example of sight, this too will have a single cause. So the good is the cause of both these, just as the sun was a cause, or light is the cause of something's being colored and being visible. Okay, so this is a case where we find Plato linking up being and knowing, or existence and knowing, in a way that that gives them the same cause, and it thereby is a cause that must lie beyond being and knowing in a type of way. So the way in which the good exists and the good is known is not going to be the exact same way in which, hamburgers exist and hamburgers are known, right? So the way in which you know the good is going to be different from the way in which you know all the things that the good causes or affects. Trying to think of another type of analogy that would be fruitful to help shed some light on this. Once again, here I am trying to shed light on the notion of light. So I think one way to maybe try to picture this example, or this analogy, is when you actually just go back to the sun. This is probably the best example right now. The way that you or the way that Socrates wants you to think about this is, you can know light by looking at objects. You can't know the sun by looking at it, as we'll see in the very next chapter, or the very next book. Sorry. To try to look at the sun will blind you. It'll make you blind, so that you actually can't look at the sun directly. He's going to continue the analogy a little bit further. And so the way that you know the cup is by looking at it directly. The way that you know the sun can't be by looking at it directly. In some sense, he seems to want to suggest that the sun is beyond vision. It's not a type of thing that ought to be looked at, because it really can't be looked at, because you'll like destroy your eyes if you try to look at it. I mean, just sort of continue. It's just an analogy, right? So don't try to nitpick it too much. He's trying to say something fruitful, and something similar, I think he wants to say, is happening when it comes to knowledge of the good. The way you know that hamburgers are good, and the way you know that friends are good, and the way you know that philosophy podcasts are good, is not going to be the same way by which you come to know what the good itself is, right? You know philosophy podcasts are good by listening. You know hamburgers are good by tasting. You don't know what the good itself is in those ways because it is beyond hearing. It is beyond tasting. Just as we talked about at the very beginning of book 6, the philosopher as the one who loves the whole, who's seeking not just to enjoy beauty in one particular area, but beauty itself, which is beyond, the parts. To think about knowing the good by merely just knowing one of the parts would be to fall into that same error. And so he's trying to say that the whole method or the way by coming to know the good itself is going to require you to have to say that the good in some ways is beyond our normal way of knowing, and therefore it's always going to sort of elude our attempt to grasp it. Just as the sun will always, elude our attempt to grasp it with sight, the good will always, be out of reach by every attempt to grasp it with our reason, with our intellect. That doesn't mean we don't have any knowledge of it, though, and this is where we're going to go to next. There is a way that we can come to know the good, but it's going to require a type of humility, which we've been talking about last time, because this is going to be central to the philosophical method of knowing. That what you have to do, he thinks, is you have to treat hypotheses as actual hypotheses. And what he means by this, and he says this on page 207, this is like 511 B to C, somewhere around there. He thinks that what you have is kind of like stepping stones, as he refers to it, or links in a chain that slowly direct you towards a type of understanding, but it's a type of understanding that's always going to open up into a deeper or broader possible understanding. And so here's what I have in mind, and sort of how to read Plato here. So he says, you begin by looking at, let's say, images of things, pictures of horses, pictures of the Grand Canyon, and all that. Okay, and so you develop some understanding of the world through books and through images, and then you come to realize these are images of some more real reality. These are pointing towards a more true, more knowable reality. So a picture of the Grand Canyon is sort of directing your mind to something that's more real than a picture, right? You look at a picture and you don't just appreciate the picture, it actually is capable of like directing your mind to the actual Grand Canyon itself. And so it can like inspire or spark your desire to want to go to that actual reality and not just spend your life looking at pictures of it, but actually immerse yourself with it or in it. So that's the type of kind of maneuver that's happening here. Is you can look at an image and it can entice you or redirect you or push you on to a higher reality, a more knowable reality. And this then is going to result in a ladder structure. So like a structure like a ladder where there's like these stepping stones. So when you look at the Grand Canyon and you actually go there instead of looking at pictures of this and reading books about it, but you actually go there, you now encounter the reality of which these pictures were aimed or directed. And so you might think to yourself, now I finally have attained what I really sought, what I really desired. I really wanted to see the Grand Canyon. Now I see it. My pursuit of beauty is accomplished because I'm here. I was spent the early part of my life only, in pseudo fulfillment, pseudo reality, because I was only looking at pictures. Now I'm looking at real reality because I'm at the Grand Canyon. Plato says, in some ways that's the case, but it doesn't end there, because what the Grand Canyon itself is it's another image of some more knowable reality. So just as the pictures imaged something, namely the Grand Canyon, Socrates thinks the Grand Canyon images something, namely beauty itself. And so the desire to want to go to the Grand Canyon is this desire to want to know the truth, want to know reality, want to immerse yourself or unite yourself with reality. And so once you're at the Grand Canyon, you should only be more enticed, more excited, more alive to want to unite yourself with reality, because you're a bit closer now. You now have experienced a little bit more of the goodness of reality. And so this sign, the Grand Canyon, is something which is aiming you or directing you, enticing you to want to know beauty. And so it kind of leads you on to that, which is something that's going to be beyond the merely like visual world, right? And so the way that Plato seems to think of this is the physical world is this icon or this image that leads you up to a higher reality that transcends the physical world. It's not opposed to the physical world, but rather the higher, this transcendent reality, the world of the forms, as he calls it, is something which is imaged in the physical world. And putting it another way, you could think of the physical world as a picture or an image or a revelation of this this more knowable, higher reality. And so how you come to ascend this ladder is going to be by learning to seek in new ways reality, learning to seek reality in newer or higher ways. And so this is something that is difficult to do, but the way that Socrates kind of presents this, I guess, at the very end of Book 6, is he talks about this is all ultimately what the dialectical discussion is, what dialectics is, or another way to put it, what philosophical conversation is it's this attempt to move from lower things to higher things. And he gives 4 kind of different conditions or 4 different stages of this ascent, which at the very lowest, he thinks it begins with imagination, because you're just dealing with like images. It's just about like sort of pure passive experience. So imagination, you could think of it as like just the reception of images. And then you have the role or the domain of opinion, which is sort of thought out or thinking through of the image. And then there's thought, which is like you can think of thought as the abstracting away of the particulars for the universal. And so the best example of this that Plato uses is something like math, where what math is, for many people it's boring, but it actually has a really fascinating, like, kind of a theological element to it, because what math is an endeavor to do is it's like the human endeavor to transcend the particular and spend one's time in the world of universals. So the beautiful thing about math, even if you're not good at it, you can still recognize it as beautiful because of the fact that it deals with things that are eternal, right? Math isn't like a contingent domain. It's the domain of math is an eternal domain in a sense, and it's a domain that we can slowly enter into. It takes a type of determination, a type of intellectual training and habituation, and you have to have all that type of training that we talked about earlier on in the Republic if you're going to be able to make this ascent into the world of the eternal. But he wants to say, but even when you're there and you're like a master at this sort of abstraction, you still don't have the thing that you're looking for. Going back to the allegory or the analogy of the sun, what you're looking for is not just to know things, but you're looking at what is the cause for why I know things. It's kind of, once again, analogous to, I don't want to just see things, although that's the case, you do, but you don't just want to see things. You also want to know what is it that made it possible for this whole world of seeing to be something that I'm a part of, right? What is it that's the cause of the world of seeing? Not merely, I want to see this one thing and I want to see this other thing, but what makes seeing possible at all? That's what you want to know, which is something that actually is going to transcend or go beyond the world of sight. Likewise, you don't just want to know things, you want to know what makes it possible for there to be knowledge in the first place, which ultimately is what Socrates refers to as the good. And therefore, like in the case of the sun, this is going to go beyond or transcend the world of knowledge. And so the way you come to this is going to always be kind of through the recognition of your inability to actually fully attain it. And so there is something that's bordering on like a mystical knowledge. This is perhaps comparable to like a mystical theology. How do you come to know that which is in and of itself an inherent mystery? It's a perplexing thing. How do you come to know what is essentially mysterious for us? And the way you come to know that is going to be something that only the philosopher can do, because the philosopher has this recognition that the method is about seeing the higher in the lower, seeing the transcendent revealed in the immanent, or in the incarnate, that which you encounter. And so we do have some understanding of the good through seeing its images. And this is, I think, why the philosopher is the one who has the ability to know the good. It's because it's the person who recognizes this method as the method by which all things are known. You ascend to knowledge, or you arrive at knowledge through seeing the whole revealed in the parts. And that's ultimately what it is to be a philosopher.